says it's live. Let's go and test a few things out. So this is the first time I'm going live with a setup, so let's have a look and see what's going on. Okay, so I've just tested the sound. Everything else seems to be okay, but for some reason it's very quiet. So let's see if I can sort that. Ah, is that too loud? Let's go and have a quick listen. So are things louder? Ah, is that too loud? Have a quick listen. Seems all right. Seems all right to me, anyway. Right, so it says I have a viewer. I'm assuming that's me because I'm watching myself. So I'll just go on assuming that I don't have anyone watching. It is weird to see a time-lapsed version of myself, though. That's just strange. So I'm going to minimize that window. So yeah, as the description says, this is a test for villain creation. Well, it's a test for live streaming as D20 advice. So since we're a few minutes into this, anyway, I've kind of missed my window. I shall take the opportunity now. Hi, I'm Drew Murray from D20 Advice, and I make gaming content. The next few videos will be focusing on other systems other than Dungeons & Dragons, but there's a few elements of the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook that I've wanted to delve into for a little bit. And yeah, I just want to have a look and see what's going down, what's going on with them. So yeah, the next few videos will be looking at the one-line RPG and introduction to tabletop RPGs for people. I've just finished my university dissertation, which was on Dungeons & Dragons, the history of Dungeons & Dragons, and more specifically, it was... I keep getting beeps of people going to me. It's the play-by-post campaign that I'm running. So, yes, my university dissertation was on Dungeons & Dragons and paratexts. For those that don't know, I will be getting to the stuff in a minute, but for the dissertation thing, paratexts are not texts. So to clarify, a text is a thing, like a film or a book or a magazine, or in some cases, even like a poster or a painting. Anything that you get something from in and of itself, that is a text. It gets murkier the more you look into it, but in its basic form, it is a work of art. It'll be like a book or something, or a film or a piece of music. Those are texts. It gets into more debatable territory the further you spread from that, but those are texts. Paratexts are the things that contextualize texts for you. They are things that you get information from, and they can alter your experience of a text. So a paratext can be the font that the book is written in, the title of the book itself, in some cases even the author, the front cover art of the book. The fact that it is a rectangular shape is also shaping some of your expectations. If all of a sudden you had it from portrait to landscape, it would shape your expectations of what kind of book that is. Most kids' books are shaped like that. Well, not most kids' books, but most books that are shaped like that are kids' books. So that would help shape your expectation of things. So those are paratexts, things around the text that shape your understanding and expectation of it. So my dissertation, besides describing and defining those terms, then went into what are Dungeons & Dragons paratexts and what are Dungeons & Dragons entryway paratexts. I also did a little questionnaire on a Dungeons & Dragons forum, Facebook page, sorry. It behaves sort of like a forum, I suppose. Asking how people found out about Dungeons & Dragons. What was the first awareness of the Dungeons & Dragons brand? So essentially, what was their entryway paratext to Dungeons & Dragons? What was the first time they were aware that Dungeons & Dragons was at least a thing. Not necessarily a game, just the name Dungeons and Dragons. What was the first time that you associated that with anything? And so you've got the cartoon show, you've got the film, you've got other people playing it, other people talking about it. You could just see a poster or a magazine article, something along those lines. So I was trying to find out what it was, and I had hundreds of responses. It was quite good. Not definitive and not groundbreaking numbers, but I wasn't expecting those. I was expecting 20 or so people to respond, and I got about 500 odd. So quite pleased with the result there. And overwhelmingly, it's other people bringing them into the hobby. So with that in mind, I eventually came to the conclusion with various secondary sources and research that what we're looking at is context. That's the main thing that draws people in. No matter what it is, context defines everything. There's been loads of research into advertising and its effects on people, and the placement of adverts on websites, and all kinds of research into behaviors of human beings, and it's all context. If you put an advert for a sofa on a website that's all about white supremacy, say, you're not likely to get many clicks on it, because people going onto white supremacy websites are just there to vent the general frustrations about the world and just be angry at people that they think they should be angry at, and they are not in the mood to buy a sofa. But if you advertise, say, guns on an American white supremacist website, you're probably going to get some customers. It's context. It's trying to work out where you put things and how you put things across, which is what I think Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is doing very well. I think their paratexts are doing well for the brand, which is a good thing. There's nothing sneaky about paratext. They're just a thing. This is how we objectively define subjective experience. So instead of just saying, oh, well, the book had a nice cover, we go, right, well, that is a paratext. That is in the same realm of understanding as these other things because of the effect that they bring. So it's not that by looking into paratexts, it's supposed to be really mean and manipulative and go, aha, well, now I know that by putting an advert at the top of the website rather than at the bottom of the website, more people will click on it. Maha, mo money, millions. It's good business acumen and just understanding how things work to take advantage of something like that. But also, it doesn't make people do it. And that was another thing that came clear from the research, is that regardless of the context that you create, all you're essentially doing is making it a nicer option to do something rather than overriding any free will that people have. So throughout all of this research, there was very little buyer's remorse that was experienced by people whose contexts of a thing that was being sold to them, either like monetarily sold, actual exchanging of money for goods and services, or just a proposition advertised to them properly. Like, download this free book. That's essentially something being sold to them, although not in the strictest sense. But yeah, people just like it more. They're more amenable to it. It doesn't override their free will and make them go and do something, which is something that I'm all in support for, because I get very antsy and edgy whenever it comes to modifying people's free will. But just making something seem nicer, that's the thing. But it also then spits in the face of all sorts of stuff that I had when I was growing up, like my own personal presentation. I was like, no, it doesn't matter what you look like and how you're dressed and stuff. Well, it kind of does. How you present to the world is part of how what you're saying is going to be absorbed by other people. And that's just, things and people for you. Oh, my viewer disappeared. Huh. I actually have other people watching this. It's not counting me watching this. That's a shame. Crap, that means that someone's actually watching. Hi, person who is watching this live. So I will stop rambling on and I will actually get on with this. Hello to whoever's watching. This will be a test live stream for creating villains. So let's create villains. What I did was create a quick little notepad file with all the dice that I would need to generate an NPC and a villain. So when it comes to these things, I have the dice that I would need already generated. I'm going to use an online dice roller just because it's easier. So I put D&D dice roller into Google, and first result is wizards.com/dnd/dice/dice.htm. It's a decent automatic dice roller. Some people don't like using dice rollers. I'm okay with using dice rollers. It's not a big deal, really, for me. You are generating a random number, and if you are one of these people who are like, oh, but a dice actually rolls and it's what you really would have got, the universe isn't predetermined in that way. And if it is, it's not predetermined in such a way that using a digital dice roller is going to fundamentally impact over the stretch of your entire life what results you get. That is not to say that you are going to get the same results if you use the dice roller, but there is going to be no discernible difference between you using a digital dice roller and an actual dice, because we can't relive the universe. We can't exist in two parallel time streams and see what the differences are. So you are just simply making a choice of one or the other. Now, random number generators are not entirely random, but then again, dice aren't entirely random when you start getting into it. So I'm fine using dice rollers on the internet, is the gist of what I'm getting at. Also, because this is going to be saved on the channel, some more context. I am a dungeon master for several games. I play in a couple, but I'm mostly dungeon master. That's where I get most of my enjoyment from. I enjoy world building and stuff. I'm currently playing in a play-by-post on Facebook, which originally started as a Lost Minds of Phandelver Facebook group, but they've allowed me and some other people to create our own, what they call homebrew campaigns. I never used campaign settings until like last year. Was the first time I used a campaign setting. I've never looked at anyone else's campaign settings or anything, because it's just not been something that interested me all that much. So that's just where am I? Dash roller. Okay, so looking at my thing, I'll be generating a random NPC that I'm not going to be using, but it's just an interesting thing to see. Now, I did use this to generate another character within about 5 minutes earlier. Not early today, but a couple of days ago when I first put this together. And so what I came up with was an exceptionally beautiful giant with high intelligence, low dexterity, so a very smart and beautiful giant. Let's make this a female giant. This is going to be a villain. So this villain is going to be very, very smart, but a little bit slower with her movements, probably due to her bulky size. She is great with children as one of her things that she has. And I'll go into the creation of these in a minute. But all of this is randomly generated. So she's great with children, bites her fingernails. She is lawful evil. Her ideal is fairness. So all of these are starting to flesh the character out a bit. You've got someone who is lawful evil. She's a villain. We're creating her as a villain. But she's great with children, bites her fingernail. She's nervous sometimes. She's very smart, but she gets worried. She gets nervous. And that's just a little trait of hers. And she thinks that fairness is the best thing. So already I'm starting to think of, okay, what would turn someone who believes in fairness evil? And I can see that as a very easy road to go down. If you've had wrong done to you, an extreme interpretation of fairness is that of justice. But I don't think I would interpret it in that way necessarily with her. It is simply her wanting to right a wrong rather than just punish someone for a wrong that they've done. Oops. Another message. I'm going to ignore these in just a moment. Yes. My wife also runs Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm now getting messages from my sister-in-law. Not quite complaining, but yeah, just pointing out that the challenge rating of the creatures that we fought against were a little bit higher than one might accept. And she just keeps on sending me messages. Excuse me, I'm going to go and grab my phone and stop it from pinging every 2 seconds. Jesus. Right. Okie dokie. Okie dokie, mokey pokey. I make ridiculous sounds sometimes. So, we've got this villain, this lady who's a giant, great with children, ideal of fairness. Her bond is dedicated to fulfilling a personal life goal. Now, so far, this is all general NPC stuff, nothing that makes her a villain. I haven't gone into the randomly generated villainous aspects yet. So she's dedicated to fulfilling a personal life goal, and she's suspicious. So a very smart but suspicious giant who is great with children, that's something that I'm focusing on. An ideal of fairness, dedicated to fulfilling a personal life goal. I think that either she's had kids or has been involved with a community that has a lot of children and something bad happened to them. And so she is wanting to address that imbalance in her mind, that something unfair happened. And so it's not necessarily about evening the scales, but either ignoring her ideal of getting things to be fair and instead, leaning into getting even, or it is purely an emotional response that she's justifying as being fair. And so it's getting revenge in a way, but justifying it. So as a villain, oh, sorry, she's also prone to rage. That's an NPC trait. As a villain, she is trying to avenge a past humiliation or insult. Again, this was randomly generated, separate from everything else. Oh, my light's just dimmed. That means my power's running out. Why did I not plug this in? Why did I not plug this in? Why did I not plug this in? Why, oh, why did I not plug this in? There's the power cable. Transformer by the plug socket. Transformer by the plug socket. Transformer by the plug socket. Well, the plug socket? There it is. Oh dear, there are Christmas decorations down here, but have unfortunately, whoops. There we go. Right. Yes, there are some jewelry boxes up there, and on top of the cupboard, where underneath we have stuck some Christmas decorations, which has made that incredibly awkward for me to go and plug in. But we're now plugged in. I'm not going to die. It's all good. Whew. So we've got, she wants to avenge a past humiliation or insult. And the method through which she's going to do that is through lying or perjury. So that says to me that if her ideal is fairness and she's lawful as well, that lying and perjury are not things that are completely outside her wheelhouse, but not her preferred way of going about things. So this is her having been pushed through the tragedy So this past humiliation or insult, that she's now using these tactics. Now, avenging a past humiliation or insult says to me that she hasn't had kids killed, because that's just a tragedy. So that takes that off the table. Avenging a past humiliation or insult through lying or perjury. I guess in that case, it's going to be that she used to look after her tribe's kids, and someone humiliated her or insulted her and basically started like a smear campaign against her. And that took the care of the kids away from her. And now she's basically doing like a smear campaign against this other person, but on a grander scale, because she's going to be a villain involved with whatever PCs come along the way. The way to defeat her was randomly generated as an ancient prophecy or riddle reveals how villain can be overthrown. So if we have this giant as an ancient giant that she's been plotting for centuries to get back, bards will have learned the tale, twisted it, distorted it, come up with limericks, which can then transform into a riddle type thing. So it will be a bardic limerick that is passed around the nearby settlements of the smaller humanoids that reveals her past. And by revealing that past, that reveals how she can be overthrown, how she can be defeated. So essentially, we've got a beautiful giant going around, gets nervous sometimes, and someone tried to smear her in the past, took away something that she loved dearly, time with children, and now she's working to smear that person back. Who is this other person? Who is this proto-villain that has led this giant on this villainous path? And what villainous actions are being performed? Well, we see that she's using lying and perjury. That can have wide-reaching effects if the giants in the region are very well respected and trusted. So if the giants amongst each other are the usual liars and backstabbers and things, as people tend to be, so generally they tell the truth, but to get their own way, they will lie to each other. But the giants have a reputation in the region for being very truthful, very helpful to people. So you've got like hill giants moving, like falling over trees out the way of like a farmer's trail or something. You've got people wanting to help out. Someone very much trusted by the wider community, having done something in private to shun another trusted member of the community, that's going to sting, because that giant then can't say, well, sorry, but this person's just done something really awful. Because there'll be the social contracts in place. There'll be the fact that no one is likely to believe her. Because as far as everyone's concerned, again, we're looking at context here, as far as everyone's concerned, this proto-villain that's done this smear campaign has done something in private that has had ramifications on our actual villainess giant, who we should probably give a name. We'll call her... let's call her Martha for the time being. We'll come up with an actual decent giant name, but for the purposes of fleshing this out, let's call her Martha. Why did you say that name? So yeah, Martha isn't allowed to deal with the kids anymore. The kids don't trust her because of a lie. So she's now going to these other villages, going to these other towns, and lying to them about where giants are going to be, what help they're going to afford them, and then playing dumb when it doesn't pan out. So you've got smaller humanoids making choices that have long-lasting effects based on the information that they're getting from Martha, which is all an attempt to smear this other giant, who is also in the wrong, but is no longer performing villainous actions. They did one thing that smeared Martha, and now they're just leaning back and enjoying life, ignoring it, thinking nothing's going to come back and bite me on this. Whereas Martha, she is going and telling farmers, yeah, you know what? Bob, the proto-villain, Bob. Bob said that they'd head down to the valley down the way, which means that all the gnolls and hobgoblins that normally come up and raid the farms, they're not going to come and get you. So you guys can stay out late, plant seeds. You can have a little jamboree thing. That'll be fine. And of course, the gnolls and hobgoblins hear the jamboree going on or notice people out in the fields later than they should be, charge out, cut a few farmers down. So by lying to these people that trust her, she's caused pain and hardship. And of course, they're going to go, Bob, where were you? Where were you, Bob? So this is where a party of adventurers might get drawn in, where basically it could be, you know, farmers have been going missing, farmers have been cut down dead due to the actions of these gnolls and bugbears and other monsters. So go and investigate that. And as far as the party's concerned, that'll be what's going on. You know, it is just these raiders that are the problem. So they go and they investigate and they find out that actually these giants in the region are very well trusted and that one of them was supposed to protect them and didn't. So go and find out about Bob and then Martha and the whole bad thing. So yeah, I'm not going to map the whole thing out, but the seeds are there. That's a completely randomly generated thing, and I don't think that's something that I would have come up with on my own. I like the fact that this helps the imagination go in different directions. Because while I feel like I can be a fairly imaginative guy, I like a lot of the older edition Dungeons & Dragons stuff, like 2nd edition, 1st edition, that relied on your imagination to take it beyond the core material. Whereas 3rd edition onwards, it didn't stop you, but the system wasn't built around it, which I think was a smart decision for them to make, because it helped define what the game was to some people. And it also helped reinforce what the game was to the majority of already existing players. Because as much as 2nd edition D&D basically said, hey, clerics, you can give them any abilities you want. You can invent spells. These can be whatever you want. As an example of a specialist, here's a druid. This is what you can do with the abilities, and just mold this thing around it. Everyone just went with the bog standard, oh, healing. That was a suggestion. And it was very explicit in 2nd edition that you can have any ability whatsoever. In your world, a bog standard cleric, as written in the player's handbook standard rules, could shoot fireballs from their eyes as a gift given from their god, have prophecies of the future as a gift given by their god. And there's no like power level limits or anything. It's all relative. They understood at the time that it was context was king, and that's something that's kind of gone away and is now the kind of alternate rules version of Dungeons and Dragons. I can understand why to a certain degree, because of the context wasn't given in the books and the publishing materials and everything that reinforce this idea of Dungeons and Dragons is what you make of it. More material was produced for, oh, this is a high fantasy world with people like this and like this, and with the authors and campaign settings coming out and everything. It created a different environment, which made it harder for people to switch mental lanes and go to the other environment. So I'm grateful for these tables for automatically generating villains, because this is stuff that I wouldn't come up with naturally. And I understand that this is the kind of stuff that I would find in campaign settings and things that I wouldn't have come up with naturally on my own, because no one can imagine everything. You're going to have your own context for things. But anyway, I also randomly generated the basic dungeon information. That is my phone ringing. Why is that ringing? I apologize. I'll be back in a minute. Oh, no. It is not my phone ringing. It was, in fact, my alarm letting me know that I need to go in about 40 minutes, because I am a fool and thought that I would need 40 minutes notice, because I am a silly Billy. Oh my God, how dumb did I sound? Anyway, so what do we have? Yes, the dungeon. So as a brief aside exercise, the randomly generated dungeon is beneath the graveyard, created by hobgoblins, built as a temple or shrine, and was abandoned due to plague. This could be where Martha is hiding out. So this could be her dungeon. There could be smaller creatures that don't pose a threat to her that can just be crawling around in here. You know, kind of your lesser fungi, oozes, sort of natural things like carrion crawlers and things for her size, her heft, wouldn't be much of a difficulty for her to contend with, the things that wouldn't naturally predate her. And these would be a danger to any players going into the temple, but this could be somewhere that she has either started kidnapping children as an aside thing, and it could be like small human or halfling children, or it could be giant children if it goes that way, or it could just be her on her own, living as a completely depressed hermit. And this, I think, would create a very effective villain for anyone playing Dungeons and Dragons. This is a sympathetic villain. This is one where she is doing bad things. She is causing great harm. Pardon me. But for an understandable reason and a sympathetic reason. So how would the players deal with this? Would they just dive into this ancient temple and cut her down? And another interesting thing is that if it's been abandoned due to plague, what if there are plague-ridden bodies of old hobgoblins there? And it could even be that the plague that this temple was abandoned due to is why the hobgoblins are displaced and now attacking the towns and villages and raiding their farmlands and things. So you can create this kind of interconnected weave of narrative and history that isn't necessarily touched on by the players. If they don't want to make their history checks and find out things about the world and they just want to go and cut down whatever they're directed towards, you can introduce a wise NPC that helps direct their actions so that they ultimately end up doing the right thing, doing the heroic thing. But yeah, this is interesting. You could have plague-ridden corpses, even plague-ridden zombies wandering the halls of this temple that the players need to deal with. And if they know of the plague in advance, they can take steps to avoid being infected themselves. Yeah, it's really good. You can move on from here and have some of the legends and religious icons of the temple or shrine come into play in a later campaign. To kind of have that key element brought in. So that's one that I automatically generated previously. I'm going to automatically generate one with you guys now. So for NPCs, I've noted that you roll 7d20, 3d6, 2d12, and 1d10, and that will generate for you everything that you need. From those dice, you will get everything that you need. So I'll roll them and then go in order down the way. Some of the d20s are taken from the Dungeon Creator section that generates what race and potentially like class or alignment or type of cult that they're associated with for generating a dungeon. I also wanted to generate the villainous race or the NPC's race, and that's not something in the standard NPC generation, so I've added that in. And then for villains, 1d20, 2d8, and then 2 other dice that are determined by the results of the d20 and one of the d8s. So let's get cracking. So we open up the dice roller that we had before, and what did I say it was? It was 7d20, then 1d20 for a villain. So let's make another villain. So let's do 8d20 and roll that. And it tells me the individual results of the dice roll, so I'll take them in order. It also tells me the total, but that's not something that we're going to be using. 2d12 is the next size down. So 2d12, let's roll those. 1d10, let's roll that. And then we've got 2d8. So let's roll 2d8. And got 3d6. 3d6. Now, as a result of the last d20 and the first d8, we now get other dice. So the last d20 result was a 3. And the first d8 result was a 2. And that is for the methods and scheme of a villain. So I go to my Dungeon Master's Guide. and we have a look at villains. Villain scheme. So that was the D8. So the D8 was the 2. So that's influence. So a D4 needs to be rolled. The result was a 2. Next one was a 3 based on a D20, which is methods. And that requires no other dice roll. That is purely bounty hunting or assassination. So now what we do is we go through what that has generated for us. And so I'm creating delineation on my notepad file. There's likely a program that I'm going to be using in the future to better write this out, but for the time being, it suits my purposes. So first off, race. So that's page 95, but we are going to go to dungeons. So race, dungeon creator. So what was our first D20 result? It was a 20. So what does that tell us? No creator, natural caverns. That doesn't help. That's how we're an NPC. Oh, I'm going to roll an additional D20 rather than just shunting it along one and see what result we get. 8. Okay. 8, dwarf. I wasn't expecting that one. Okay. So we now have as another NPC a dwarf. We shall not call this dwarf Martha. We shall come up with a better name. And for alignment is another D20. So what was the second D20 result along the way? 19. 19, chaotic evil. So we are dealing with a chaotic evil dwarf. Okay. Occupation and history. I was going to look at the player character background packages for those, but let's ignore that for now. That's something that we determined, and we sort of determined Martha's occupation and history. So appearance is the next D20 result, which is a 14. And the book tells us that a result of a 14, designing an NPC, braided beard or hair. So let's have a braided beard and hair. Let's make that executive decision. So that's the appearance. The abilities are the first 2 D6, high and then low. So when we look at our D6, 5 and 5, they are both the same. So again, I shall re-roll one of the D6s, so the second D6, I shall roll, and that got a 4. So we then have a look. 5 is wisdom, 4 is intelligence. So we have a high wisdom and a low intelligence. So this is already suggesting to me that we're looking at perhaps a bestial Jurga type, someone who's very good at hunting and spotting things and just being very keen of sense and working things out, so intelligent in that respect, but not a lot of book learning. Someone who doesn't know a lot of things intrinsically, they're very reactionary. That's what this is telling me. Along with the bearded, the braided beard and hair, being chaotic evil, already I'm getting smacks of some kind of, like, if Gollum was effective, you know, if Gollum was good at stuff, like a ring wraith Gollum type. So someone crawling around in the Underdark and is looking to meet out their own ends. That's what's coming to mind at the minute. That may change entirely based on subsequent information. Let's have a look. Talent is the next D20 result. So let's have a look at our D20 results. 7 is the next D20 result. Great at solving puzzles. I don't think that contradicts anything that we've said so far. So great at solving puzzles. So this could represent the kind of thing where you hand a Rubik's Cube to a wolf child and they just solve it just by working it out, intuiting it. It's not that they know how a Rubik's Cube works, it's just they're able to work things out. And that's what the wisdom score partly represents, is the ability to work things out rather than just what you know. It's intuition, it's willpower, it's all these things. So I like that that's one of the things that's randomly come up here. That's a talent, great at solving puzzles. You could stick them in a maze and they'd work their way out. Mannerism. This is something that can make or break it. So mannerism is another d20, and that is 16. 16 is choose something. Choose something. So they are chewing something at most times. Could be a bit of grit. They could just chew on some like salted meat or something that they've captured, or it could be like a fungus of some kind. I would be inclined, if this was going to be like I mean, we're generating it as a villain, so it's going to be like a main villain type thing. This is someone who finds sort of a magical or alchemical fungus of some kind, or an underground grass that he can chew on, and it produces some sort of effect, like a boosting effect to some of his stats, or just a minor magical effect. Nothing that's going to turn the tide of a battle, if it comes to a battle. I'm not sure how they're going to go about doing things, but yeah, I can imagine that. But basically, kind of like chewing tobacco or chewing like caffeinated gum or something. You know, it gives them a little buzz, a little boost, but nothing that's gonna override the rest of the game. So that's mannerism. Interactions with others. This is the first D12 result we're looking at. So I got an 11 on the first D12 and a 9 on the second. So what did I say? Sorry, 11 and then 9. So 11, quiet. So when interacting with people, they're quiet. I would imagine that there would be someone who doesn't go out and talk much. They've pretty much grown up in the caves. They don't do talking, they do action. So this kind of plays into that high wisdom, low intelligence, you know, wolf child, cave boy type thing. So that's the mannerism and the interactions with others. Useful knowledge. This is something that I didn't do with Martha either. Because this is not something randomly determined. This is something that you have to determine based on the other information. So for Martha, a piece of useful knowledge that she has that other people don't have or don't have as ready access to could be the temple that she holds up in. She's been there for a long time. She knows some of its secrets. So with the dwarf here, let's determine that after we've determined other things. Ideal be a D6 and potentially a D20. So this is page 90. So a D6 and, I was saying D20 to determine the alignment, which we've already done, chaotic evil. I just made note of it twice here. So D6, chaotic evil. Now, with Martha, I effectively chose between the lawful and the evil with the D6 result. So we have a look at the D6 results. And 6 is the last D6 result. So let's look at evil. Slaughter could be good. And for chaotic, whimsy. I have started getting an idea of this very animalistic, cruel beast of a man. So I'm going to go with slaughter as their ideal. They are going to be a very cruel and unforgiving person. Next up is their bond, which is determined by a D10 result. And so we look at the D10s, and it was 1D10, and that's a 4. Loyal to a benefactor, patron, or employer. So, bond loyal to a patron, benefactor, or employer. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So, this is going to be someone kind of like a ring wraith. This is going to be someone who has a higher up, but has been sent here to cause a lot of problems. Whereas Martha didn't have that. Her bond was being dedicated to fulfilling a personal life goal, which, as we sort of determined, was getting revenge or getting access to children again, because she loves children. She's great with them. Whereas our dwarf friend here is just out to slaughter people, and he's great at doing it. So some patron, some benefactor, some employer has directed this person towards the PCs or towards something that the PCs are going to care about. A village, princess locked up in a castle, whatever you want. Oh, my voice is getting... sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. So I'm going to be coughing a little bit. I apologize. But I'm going to finish this and then go and pick up my son from nursery. So I'm not going to go and get some water just now. We're nearly done. After the bond, flaw or secret. And that's with a D12. 11 was the first D12. Excuse me. And 9 was the second. The first D12 was interactions with others, so it's the second one. It's a 9 for flaw or secret. Shameful or scandalous history. Right. Shameful or scandalous history. Just keep things fairly simple and not bog this character down with too much baggage. We could have the the history be that they were once like a noble dwarf, or at least someone respected, and they did something that caused them to go into hiding and encounter this benefactor who has twisted them. So now I'm thinking like a demonic or fiendish benefactor, possibly an aboleth or a mind flayer, or maybe even an elder brain, or an actual like demon or devil has found this person as they escaped into the Underdark due to their shameful or scandalous history, and turns them into this braided, red-eyed killer, and sent them back out into the world. So the shameful or scandalous history, I suppose the specifics are not necessarily important for the character, but it'll be important for the PCs to try and uncover something about this character. Hopefully, the weakness of the villain links into this. If not, it's not a big deal. We can change how we've interpreted things so far. So that's flaws and secrets, and that's the end of the basic NPC stuff. So as a villain, we also have a scheme, which is a D8 to determine it. So the next D8 we have is a 7 as a result. So let's go ahead to villainous schemes. And it was a 7, wasn't it? It was a 7. Revenge. And so a D4 is required. Let's go. I rolled a D4. Why did I roll a D4 previously? No, I haven't rolled a D4, sorry, that's a D6. Oh, yeah, I had to roll the D4, and that was a 2. See, this is one failing of the notepad file. I've not kept meticulous notes. So, seeing as I discussed before, randomness isn't predetermined, I can roll another D4, ignore the previous result, and it's not going to affect the universe in any great way. So let's re-roll this to be fair and sure. I got a result of a 1. So revenge, avenge a past humiliation or insult. So, revenge. Revenge, a past humiliation or insult. This seems to fit into the shameful or scandalous history. So that's what they're after. So they can still be directed by a patron, but that's their motivation. And that could be something that they're ultimately trying to do while also doing this other stuff. It would be nicer to have that as the core thing. So I think we're going to rejig what we've already decided here. Let's have a look at the methods, though. So the methods was another D20 result. And we've had the 16, the 4 is next, I believe. So we've got D20 for the dungeon creator, D20 for the alignment, D20 for appearance, D20 for the talent, D20 for the mannerism, D20 number 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're at the result of 4. So method number 4, captivity or coercion with a D10 to determine how this goes about, which I got a result of a 6 for. So legal intimidation. Well, method, coercion, legal intimidation. So that is very different to a lot of the stuff that we've got so far. So this is going to require a bit of a weakness. Finally, is the last D8, which we've already rolled, and that D8 is a 7. Oh, I absolutely 7. Let's have another another look. We had a D8 to determine the scheme, second D8 to determine weakness. This is D12 where we also had 2 results, so 2D8, so 7, the weakness. The villain falls when an ancient enemy forgives its past actions. Okay, so weakness. Ancient enemy forgives past. So instead of being a willing participant, then this is kind of giving me more of an impression of much more like a ring wraith, in fact. Someone who has had their mind twisted by an evil force and being forgiven justices will give them the willpower to break free of these demonic shackles. Captivity or coercion, legal intimidation. Legal intimidation. Now, that can be taken in one of 2 ways, and I don't think they go into define these things specifically to allow you to interpret them in various ways. So, legal intimidation could be, excuse me, legal intimidation could be simply you are going to intimidate people in a fashion that you are not going to suffer legal consequences for doing so. So in a sort of medieval style setting, leaning over the counter and putting on a fairly aggressive tone of voice is not going to get you thrown into jail, as long as you do it to the right people. Whereas another interpretation of legal intimidation could be going down legal routes to intimidate other people. So like buying up the land all around a shop, and a bylaw being that if you own all the land around something, you then own the thing inside, and evicting the people that are there through something that they couldn't help. So that's another form of legal intimidation, to do something for you. That's legal intimidation. So we're now moving away from this bestial thing. He might be quiet, but now I'm thinking more akin to what's his face from No Country for Old Men? So that kind of silent killer, just going around killing people. Yeah, great at solving puzzles. So yeah, low intelligence, I think, will definitely indicate low book smarts, but they'll still come across as a smart person with their high wisdom, and being great at solving puzzles and good at killing people and being fairly quiet. So they're loyal to a patron, benefactor, or employer. Yeah, they'll be kind of like Mike from Breaking Bad, if that's an example that people get. So yeah, a kind of quiet person who might be in it for the money, might not be loyal to someone to death, but they're still loyal. They still have honor in that respect. Got a shameful, scandalous history, and as a villain, they want to avenge a past humiliation or insult. But if they're forgiven for something, okay, yeah, that all seems to go into it. And so captivity coercion is more coercion, legal intimidation. Okay, so we're looking less at a Gollum-esque creature of the night from a cave dwelling, and we're looking more at a very smart, and I'm going to use the word intelligent, but not in the intelligence score sense of the word. So a very intelligent manipulator who is doing something for the honor of the person that helped pick them up after they were shunned by society. So this could be less of a demonic twisting of this person's physical and mental form, and more, the rich guy up the castle. You could have Strahd be it, the vampire dude, if you want to plot this kind of villain into another story. You could have that kind of social manipulator take this dwarf under their wing and reinforce that, oh no, you can't go back because all these people have shunned you. They hate you now for everything that you've done. But with me, you could at least find some solace in that you're doing good work. I'm not going to shun you, but everyone else shuns you. And they could have forgiven him a long time ago, but he's just no longer part of that community and might be convinced to not believe them. So that would be the work of the PCs to defeat this villain, is to get this person to understand that they have been forgiven. It could be that their loved ones are all dead, and so you've got to dig up this letter from an old girlfriend, boyfriend, a parent, a sibling, that basically outlines, look, we don't know where you are, where you've gone, but with what happened, here's our account of it. You weren't accountable, or it may have been something that you did, but we forgive you. We love you. Please come back. And of course, it died. Or it could be that they're still alive and you need to try and find them because they've now disappeared because their family got shunned out of the village or something. But like, no, we're family. We need to stick together, but we've lost you. So while the village kicked us all out, we don't blame you for that. It's fine. We love you. Come back. You can have all sorts of stuff in that sense. So this this now takes me from a cavern to an urban setting, not just like a town or a village, but we're talking like a city. We're talking like 2-3 story buildings. We're talking stone and wood. We're talking scandal going on. This is cool. I like what we've come up with. That's really, really cool. Now, I am going to quickly generate as well that fits into this. Let's hope it still fits into this, because I would very much like it to. So dungeon location is a D100, but for an exotic location, it's a D20. Let's just go with D100 just now and see what we get and see if we like it. So we got a 94. Let's go to dungeons. 94, underwater. Doesn't fit. So let's try a D20. 7. Castle or structure sunken in a swamp. Better. Okay, so let's go with, so dungeon is castle or structure sunken in swamp. And this could be either where the patron lives or where this person has taken up holding, the patron living the life of luxury, but they are here to be closer to the actual city proper. And so this city is going to be situated near a swamp. Not necessarily in the middle of a swampland and they're in the only like dredged bit, but there's going to be swampland nearby. So this is going to be a fairly warm thing. I'm imagining like your typical medieval city, like your kind of your Tudor, early Tudor period city, set up near like a very warm forest, like not edging into jungle territory, but we're gonna have lots of trees and plants and things around about the place. Yeah, this is going to be one where they rely on steady and regular trade all the time. There's carts and horses going back and forth through the city gates all hours of the day, and the roads have various guard towers along the way, like every mile or two, to protect travelers along the way. So there'll be guards posted in these garrisons to help protect things. There'll be sleeping quarters and a small stable for maybe 1 or 2 horses so that people can stop along the road if they need to. I'm taking a lot of inspiration from David Eddings here with that sort of thing. Yeah, to kind of keep people safe in this dense forest structure, which allows for like the occasional swamp to be hidden in the trees or outside of the forest land and stuff. And there's a lot of things that could be dangerous. So a lot of people, especially when traveling, will be on edge. This will allow our dwarf character to take advantage of stress and these anxiety-inducing situations to put on additional legal pressures. It's like, well, I've managed to ban you from these garrisons, so if you're traveling along these roads, who knows what might happen to you unless you do a little something for me and I can make this paperwork go away. That's, yeah, I'm liking this. So what else do we need to generate here? The creator of this structure. So that was one of the other D20s. So that was 4, so 16. The Kuatoa. So the Kuatoa created by Kuatoa. Could be a Kuatoan warlord that's the patron. Could just be that the Kuatoa built this kind of sunken structure that's in fact come up. Perhaps this was a nice serene lake, but due to weather conditions, it's now started drying up. It's now this muddy, swampy environment. You might have like dead freshwater fish like around the place. It could be a recent situation that's cropped up or not so recent. And now you've got the structure kind of half sticking out of this swamp, and it's an old Kuatoan structure. That's really cool. You could have some still flooded segments as well. That's really interesting. And the dungeon purpose is another D20, which I think is our last D20 results. That's 3. Layer, right? Okay, so purpose, layer, and last thing is dungeon history. I think I've gone to the end of my D20s there. So I will roll 1 more D20 and get a 10. And so the dungeon history is creators destroyed by attacking raiders. Creators destroyed by attacking raiders. So yeah, so this dwarf, who we shall call Jurgar with a J. So it's not a Djurgar, he's Jurgar. So Jurgar the dwarf lived in this city 200 years ago. And his family was fairly prominent, fairly wealthy. A scandalous event happened, which I've not decided on yet, but I'm conscious of the time. And he was forced out through his own shame. He came across a patron of some kind who took him under his wing, convinced him that everyone in that city is just out to get him, really. And so he's now taking revenge against the city. That's what he wants to avenge, a past humiliation or insult against the city. So he wants that city to be wiped out. So this humiliation or insult should be connected to the city, or a noble family that's still there. So let's say it's, let's go with stereotypes. It's an elf noble family that, similar to with our Martha and Bob situation, there was a smear campaign, there was a situation set up by the elves, or a situation that wasn't set up by the elves, but was perceived to be set up by Zhergar, perceived to have been set up by these elves. And so he was really humiliated, and it was scandalous. So he lost some holdings or something, was shunned out of the town, manipulated, and is now back. And so he's now this quiet, collected, dark figure in the corner of the tavern, chewing on something. We can just go with that, chewing tobacco or something rather than a fungus or something like that. And so he's constantly chewing at something, rarely talking, and he'll occasionally complete puzzles and things. So like if people are playing in a tavern with like a puzzle box and a sliding puzzle box thing, he'll notice an argument or something. He'll be very aware of everything going on around him, and he'll just casually push off from his leaning position, walk past, quickly do the puzzle box, put it down, and go and sort out whatever it is that's attracted his attention. You know, a bar fight brewing or something, or a legal dispute happening between two people that's now spilled out into the bar. It's like the opposite of a bar brawl. It's like a business argument outside the bar gets brought into the tavern. Yeah. So this is just someone who proves his abilities, and because of the amount of time that's passed, people either don't recognize him or they do, and his presence just puts people on edge. And he's now collected his family's inheritance and fortune or something, so he's got a lot of legal ways to intimidate people. And so he's more just like a problem in the city. And so for the PCs, they might be hired by these elves to protect them more socially. This is actually this has gone from what I thought would be a very like tooth and nail, axe and sword fight. This is now a fairly intelligent, and this is a social manipulation villain. I like this. This is interesting. I might, in fact, use this villain at some point in one of my campaigns. So yeah, and that is the random generation of NPCs. As you see, I've gone fairly slowly with regards to certain dice rolls and things, and explaining my choices and the reinterpretation of things as we've been going along. So hopefully you found this useful in some way. It's good to go slow when you're first doing things. What I might do in the future, depending on how this is received or how I'm feeling at the time, I might do a rapid actual dungeon generation where you're randomly determining like how many doors there are in the room, so because that's also in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Or I might bash out like 4 or 5 of these in about 10 minutes, and we can then talk about the individual villains that we've randomly generated and how they might even intersect if we wanted to create like a group of villains for a campaign that are in different sections of the map, and how they might interact and their schemes might overflow and stuff. And so the PCs could find out about one of these villains, get scared off or something if it's like a combat-y type one that can't defeat him yet, or a certain one that get run out of town through the schemes of this thing, go to another town, find something else odd going on, see if they can work out a way to use them against each other. That'll be interesting. Even though I've sort of predetermined that sort of aspect, with the random generation, you never know what comes up. We could change our mind later. So that was the random generation. I hope you enjoyed it in some fashion. I'm going to stop this now, and it's going to do its whole buffering processing thing and put it up online. And then I might share this video about it just to see who likes it and whatnot. I apologize for the setup issues before, with the whole power cable and stuff. I took my laptop downstairs while I was making a cup of tea or watching YouTube videos, and I didn't plug it in after that. So, mea culpa. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.